Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Carla Garrick, and I am an author, activist, and attorney. I live here in the great state, the free state of New Hampshire, and I wanted to join Lily today to just talk a little bit about my own immigrant story. Um, I am originally from South Africa. I was born and raised there, sort of raised. I was daughter of a diplomat, so I did live all over the world growing up. In fact, I was in 6 primary schools, which is sort of similar to military brats, I guess. That's one of the things I often hear, is that people who were raised in America in the military and who traveled a lot, we seem to have had very similar upbringings. My dad was stationed in New York working for the UN in the 70s. We lived in Bophuthatswana, which was an independent homeland in South Africa, and I'll get into that and sort of the apartheid regime and all of that in a little bit. And then my parents moved to Sweden in 83, I think it was, and then I went to boarding school in South Africa and would go visit them over the summers and winters. Everyone has a unique story. I always say that everyone in America is an immigrant. It just depends what generation you are. People who were born and raised here are obviously quite lucky. And then those of us who come from different and other places who've had the wonderful opportunity of living in this great country, and especially this great state of New Hampshire, are quite lucky. I thought I would set the tone a little bit. As I mentioned, I'm an author, activist, and attorney. And my book, The Ecstatic Pessimist, is stories of hope, mostly. It's a collection of short stories, award-winning short stories, essays, creative nonfiction, and all of that. And one of the stories is called Jet Settler, and I thought it would be great to just read. It's just a couple of pages, but it sort of sets the tone, I think, a little bit in terms of what my voice is and what my coming to America story was all about. So if you will indulge me, here we go. Jet Settler. I'm an immigrant now. Immigrant. The word screeches into my mind like a racing cartoon character. A cloud of dust settles after the T. The word dissipates, replaced by images of boats and crowds and noise and filth. Of tiny, grimy tenement apartments, smoke, soot, chimneys, narrow, dirty alleyways, of struggling to make ends meet, scrounging out an existence. Immigrant, a pathetic word, a label like refugee. No, that's not quite right. I chose to come here. I had a choice. But who would turn down this opportunity to be able to live and work in America? America, America. Home of the brave, land of the free, the big lettered American dream, and Uncle called Sam, fireworks, hot dogs, and hamburgers, tomato sauce and relish, correction, ketchup and relish, as much relish as I want. Relish, relish life, live life with relish. That's why I'm here. So as I mentioned, that's from my book, The Ecstatic Pessimist, Stories of Hope, mostly. That was really just to give you a flavor of what my experience was like. My early life, as I mentioned, was really traveling all over the world, which was, of course, a wonderful blessing. It also gave me a really good sense of what was severely wrong with South Africa. So South Africa was a police state. It was a nationalist police state under the nationalist regime. This was the apartheid regime, which started really under the British around the turn of the 19th century, but was really leaned into by the Afrikaner political group, the nationalists, once the country got independence. So again, I was very lucky. I got to travel a lot, see other parts of the world. You know, I have jokingly always say, if there is if there ought to be one law, I would make it that everyone should travel a little bit. I think it really informs the human condition, and it really gives us a really good sense that there are so many more things that that unite us than what separates us. Growing up in South Africa was interesting, right? So it was a very controlled environment. When I say police state, I don't use that term lightly. It was obviously way better for white people than it was for Black people, but there was population control. There were papers. You had to be able to show, if you're a Black person, that you had the papers that you were allowed to be in this area. There were nighttime curfews at certain times. There were illegal border wars that were happening. There was military conscription for all white males, and they were being sent to illegal, not even declared border wars. So the history of South Africa and in that time is, I think, very generally murky to most of the world, and it's complex because there's the whole colonial aspect of the relationship between the Boers, the Dutch, you know, the Dutch East Indian Company, and the farmers who came in the 16th and 17th century. And then in the 18th century, the British were like, "Oh, you guys have gold and diamonds and stuff, so maybe we want to come." So of course they came and, you know, mucked everything up. And then there was this really difficult relationship between, you know, white and Black people. But then also something that is, you know, generally glossed over is there are a lot of Black tribes that just don't really care for each other either. And so it's a complex soup of a country. And I was really, you know, becoming an activist and a fully actualized person in law school during the fall of apartheid. So I went to college in 89 and graduated in 93 with my law degree. And of course, Nelson Mandela was elected president in 94. And actually, Louis and I were some of the few white people who went to Nelson Mandela's inauguration at the Union Building. So that was really exciting. I know some people are like, "What? You voted for a communist?" And I'm like, "What? I was 21 and I didn't know better." At that stage, that option looked better than the nationalist control we had. Because of the apartheid regime's policies, of course, the world at large had put sanctions on South Africa. You couldn't watch movies. You couldn't get any kind of music. You know, you'd have to sneak in LPs. There was a record store in Johannesburg that would get albums from overseas, and you could go and you could borrow the record, and then we would tape them, and then we would all exchange the tapes. And that was sort of the only way to get anything that was like cool or outside the norm, or you know, things that we just literally could not get. So my coming to America story, as you could hear, we ended up in San Francisco, is it's a pretty good story. I can't lie. So the story is that I won a green card in the lottery, and everyone's like, "No way!" And it's like, "Yes way." So basically, what had happened was my parents, my sister got recruited from South Africa to come work in America. My parents came out to visit her. And this was around 94, I believe. And I was still in law school, in college, in South Africa at the University of Pretoria. And they called me and they were like, "There's this thing called the green card lottery. We're really not sure what it is, but basically you just have to say you want to immigrate to America. You have a high school education," which of course I did. I was in law school, and that here's your phone number and your name. It's called the Diversity Visa Lottery, and the idea was that they would give visas to people with where there was a low level of immigration to America. So for countries that didn't have a historic high level of immigration. So my folks called. I was like, sure, that sounds fine. I was like, what's up, crazy parents? And my boyfriend actually at the time was like, yeah, enter me too. And if one of us wins, we'll get married, right? Lo and behold, then I won a green card. So that was very exciting. We were pretty shocked that that was the case. And we had just gotten back from a movie. The movie sounds like a crazy story, but it's all true, was Green Card, which was a movie about, sort of a marriage of convenience that becomes a marriage of romance and all of that. Now, we were already romantically inclined, so it's not quite on the nose, but, there are sort of similarities. And in the movie, there are these very funny scenes, right, where people have to go, they have to go for interviews at the consulate and they ask all these questions. And I will tell you, I think the tell in life is if you actually know what deodorant your wife or husband uses, it's probably a fake marriage, because I've been married 27 years and I still don't know. So anyway, so the green card lottery paperwork arrived one night. We came back from the movie and it was right there on the doormat, and I kind of ripped it open and I was like, oh, what's this? And then I was like, oh my goodness, I want a green card, right? So we sort of went through the motions of all of that. As you hear there are lots of interviews. There were blood tests. You had to prove you didn't have certain diseases, all of that kind of stuff. We actually came out to America. You sort of start your paperwork, and then you have a year from that time to come. So we came out to America and we actually explored several different areas to see what we thought would be the best fit for us. We looked at Silicon Valley. Our motivations or the reasons or the things we were looking at were things like, where could we both work? Louis is a technical person, software engineer, electronic engineer by training. So we knew we wanted to be sort of techie. I wanted to not have to go back to law school, but preferably only have to take the bar exam. So in the end, we went to, California, the Bay Area. We looked at the Washington area. We looked at around New York. And in the end, decided that San Francisco Bay Area would be the best fit for us. The thinking was, okay, great, we can settle there and figure things out. So we did the typical immigrant story. We had 2 suitcases and not zero money, but under $10,000. So not a lot of money if you have no jobs and no one. But what we did is we decided this was just going to be this grand adventure. We're going to give it our best shot. I think Louis and I are both innately risk takers. I think that immigrants in general tend to be risk takers because you have to be willing to put yourself out there, and it's scary, right? You don't know people, you don't have a network, you have to reestablish everything from the start. So we ended up in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, which is actually what that story is about, which is a pretty shady neighborhood in San Francisco, or at least it was in the mid-90s. And so we were in this, oh man, it was the world's worst apartment, really. It had dead people, crack house, police raids, bullet holes, the works, right? But you do what you have to do when you come to make it better. And America is worth it, or at least the America I immigrated to is totally worth it. There are, issues, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So that's sort of how it all started. And I just knew the second I saw that green card lottery response, I was like, I'm going. Louis was like, I love you. So if you'll have me, I'm going too. And so we snuck off. We got married. We had a second wedding. We sold all our stuff and we packed our suitcases and we moved to America. So, what do I love about America? I mean, there's so many things. I love the free market economy that it was based on, that we are having a hard time sort of hanging on to. Um, I love the sort of risk taking sense of the nation. This which is also, of course, changed. But if you were from somewhere else and you heard or had the opportunity to move to America, most people would grab that, just with two hands, because it's a country that respects, or used to respect, personal autonomy, individualism. If you work hard and put in the time, the sky's the limit, the land of the free, home of the brave, as the story said at the start there. And what's not to love? I think coming from a country that was so racially conscious and sort of, just had really bad policies around that. One of the things I actually loved when I moved here was that it wasn't like that, right? Like that America, it never, ever, until maybe in the past 2 or 3 years, ever felt to me like there was this race forward pitting of people against each other, which is a insidious, awful thing. And we should really just try and move away from that, because who benefits when we're pitting sides against each other? It's generally the government, and the government getting bigger. What else do I love about America? I really, really, really love the founding documents, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They are pretty awesome. Now, they got two things wrong. Chickies should also be allowed to vote. And of course, slavery was wrong. It was a bad idea. And Black people should have had the vote as well from the start. But assuming that we can say nobody's perfect, you make mistakes, and then you fix and you iterate. And we did fix both those problems. Women have the vote. Black people have the vote. What I loved is that it felt, to me at least, like in America, as Martin Luther King would say, the content of your character was what mattered. Like, I never felt that race sense in the way that I felt it and was frustrated by growing up. And so it's sad that we've moved away from that. And I think we should be mindful about that and maybe think about if there's a better approach that we can take. And of course, there is. What concerns do I have about America today? I personally think that we're going to have a hard time reforming the federal government. Whether you want to call it the swamp or the hellmouth is one of the ones I call it. That's from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The Capitol from Hunger Games. Whatever bad name you want to give DC, I think most people at this stage are in agreement that, it's rotten to the core. It is corrupt. And that, we are going to be hard pressed to actually fix the problems there. And that people who believe in liberty, who are liberty forward, who believe in individual rights, who believe in individualism. And may I remind you that the individual is the smallest minority. So if you care about minorities, you have to care about individual rights. I'm concerned about the past 1.5 to 2 years with the medical tourney we're seeing that is now being implemented across America. Lockdowns are things that you do in jail. It is not something you do to free people. You do not quarantine healthy people. You take the people who are at risk and you do the best job you can for them. We failed, or the administration, both parties entirely failed at this. They seem beholden to big pharma. They seem beholden to big tech with the censorship. And I believe America is moving into dark days. Now, I actually believe that 12 years ago, when I moved to New Hampshire in 2008, I already saw the writing on the wall. Why back then even? First of all, we have unsustainable debt. This country is broke, and issuing more debt is not going to solve the problem. We are literally at a stage where the government is like getting a new credit card to pay off the old credit card while being delinquent on your mortgage and having 8 kids and being pregnant and. So economically, the trajectory we are on is absolutely unsustainable. So the people who are like leaning towards the communism side of things, where they're like, oh, we could just, I don't know, take the billionaires' money and that'll solve our problems. Well, here's a little news for you. You could take all the billionaires' money, in American billionaires' money, and you can only run the government for about 8 months. So what are you going to do then? And let me tell you, folks, just the ordinary folks, they're going to start there and they're going to come to you. So history teaches us that you cannot live at the expense of someone else. And it is not greed to want to keep your own money, as the excellent Thomas Sowell tends to say. It's not greed to keep your own money. It is greed to want to take other people's money. So what we need to do is we need to regroup in America. I would like to see a lot more states' rights come back in. What do I mean by that? Let's give the power back to the states. Social Security is bankrupt. Everything is unsustainable. I am an immigrant to America. I am a refugee to New Hampshire, to the free state of New Hampshire. And like every immigrant, I have a great story, and I encourage folks to, get my book, The Ecstatic Pessimist, Stories of Hope, mostly. You can find that on Amazon or on my website, carlagerrick.com. And let's solve these problems. Immigrants really represent something because they have this innate love of America, right? Because we chose it. I chose to come here. And I want to see this country continue to thrive and continue to be the beacon of liberty it used to be. I thank you so much for having me on. Thank you for letting me speak about my history and my background. And I hope people will reach out. You can find me on carlagerrick.com. Thanks so much. Peace out.